Hi everybody, we are live. A bit later this evening, but I hope the time is still okay for you. Hey, if you come in, then as always, please let us know where you come from. And also I'm interested in what position you currently have in management consulting. So are you a student who wants to get into consulting? Are you a intern? Are you a consultant? Or are you already project manager or above? So please write in the chat where you are from and on what level of consulting you currently are. So I see people are joining. Welcome everyone. Cool. Today we have a very interesting topic. Talk about Excel skills. I will give you some time to join. Very nice. I see Nigeria here. Northern Ireland. Very cool. Junior consultants, some interns. Cool. I think this is relevant, especially for all the interns and junior consultants. I think you will get a lot out of it. Cool. But then let's start. So, do you want to learn all the necessary Excel skills that you need as a management consultant? Then this video is for you. Hi everyone, my name is Johannes Niari and welcome to this channel. Welcome to Mastering Consulting. And on this channel, I want to help you to learn the necessary skills to have a great career in management consulting and also to live a balanced and happy private life. And today we have a great topic. We will talk about Excel tips for management consultants, especially for junior management consultants. And as you probably know, this is part of my daily live series. So I do like daily lives to talk about my experience in management consulting that I had the last 3 years, but also I will tell some stories about my current life as a management consultant. So if you're new to this channel and on YouTube, then please subscribe to the channel. Also, please put a thumb up and hit the bell. And on Instagram, as you probably know, you can always reach me by writing me direct messages. And as always, we will do the content first. If you have any questions, then just write them in the chat. I will go through the chat afterwards. So if you have any questions, just write it in the chat and I will answer them after the content. Okay, so I would say let's start talking about Excel. And the reason why I talk about Excel skills for management consulting is obviously because I receive a lot of requests to talk about Excel skills. And I think Excel is much more difficult than PowerPoint. The reason for that is that there are so many Excel functions, and especially at the beginning, it's very hard to know what kind of Excel skills or functions or formulas I should focus on learning at the beginning. And I think the reason why it is so difficult is that consulting or Excel work in management consulting is so complex, okay? It's not like in, for example, in banking, so many people who are in investment banking, for them it's usually enough to simply learn how to build a business model. But for management consultants, it's much more complicated because you have several types of business models, and this is very difficult. So sorry, I see that we have some issues here. Can you please write in the chat if you see me? Because I think I had some connectivity issues. I think now it works, right? Yeah. So sorry, had a bad Wi-Fi connection, but I think now the live is on again. Okay, so the reason why it is so complex for management consultants is because the work that you do in Excel as a management consultant is so diverse, okay? There are so many tasks that you do. And in other professions, like for example, in investment banking, it's much easier because there usually it's enough if you just are good in building Excel models. And what I want to do today is that I talk about the most important tasks that you usually do in Excel as a management consultant. And I also want to talk about what kind of skills you need for those most important tasks in management consulting. So this will, I mean, it's almost impossible to do a very comprehensive overview about all the Excel skills that you need in management consulting, because it's too complex for that. But I want to narrow it down to the 4 most important areas of tasks that we are usually doing as management consultants. And this should give you, first of all, a very good overview and a sort of a place where you can start if you want to systematically develop your Excel skills. Cool. Let's start. So for me personally, there are mainly 4 main tasks, and I will first go through these 4 main tasks that you have as a management consultant in Excel. And after that, as I also did with PowerPoint, I will give you some power tips. So some tips that helped me throughout the last 3 years to work in Excel. But let's talk about the main areas of tasks that you work in as a consultant. So task number 1 is collecting data, okay? And this is actually more or less the easiest. So this is typically where you send out data requests, or where you kind of collect data from research, or also if you develop some kind of measures and you just want to track them. This is usually everything that I summarize as the task of collecting data. Okay, and this is, I mean, in every project you have kind of data collection tasks, and you usually collect all of your data, obviously, in Excel. So this is usually very, very easy to do, because the only Excel skills that you need for that are simple calculations like addition or multiplication. You sometimes need to link some cells, and also you have to do some formatting. Okay, so to give you an example, usually if we request some data from a client, for example, let's say we want to know the FTE distribution across several functions, then what I would usually do would be just to take one simple Excel sheet where I list all of the data that I would need. I would also make some input cells where I highlight where the client should put in the data, and I just would make it look very nice. Maybe if I have several sheets of data requests, I would also do a kind of a summary sheet where I link all the data input to the summary sheet, so that it's easier for me afterwards to analyze it. But usually all the data collecting part in Excel is very easy. So again, you just need like simple formulas like sums and multiplications, or addition and multiplication, linking cells, and formatting. Okay, this should be usually very easy to do. The second task is much more difficult. So it's preparing data. Okay, so usually, I mean, sometimes you get the data, as I just said, with a data request. Then you have the data in a very structured way, and it's very easy to work with the data. It becomes much more complicated if the client just sends you like maybe a data export from SAP, or just some, I don't know, data from their CRM system. So then usually you receive data in a very unstructured way. And this is where you need to work on data preparation. So usually what this includes is that you, for example, as I just said, receive an input file from the client, and your task is to make it easy to analyze the data. Okay, so maybe you have to separate the columns, maybe you have to remove duplicates. So this is all stuff that you can do. Also, very often you have to merge data sets. So maybe you have data from one source, you also have data from other source, and your task is to merge the data. And as I just said, so the main goal is always that you make the data very, very easy to analyze in the steps after that. So the main functions and skills that you usually need for that step is mainly functions like text to columns. This is very helpful. Also like removing duplicates, and also like all the search and replace stuff. And also very often you need like text functions. Okay, so where you kind of the typical left and right functions where you only extract parts from one cell. So these are usually formulas that help you to prepare data. Okay, so just to summarize or to repeat, so text to columns, remove duplicates, search and replace, and all the text functions. So these are usually the formulas that I use the most if I do data preparation. Okay, so step number 3 is that you analyze the data. And this is actually the most complicated part, obviously, because in consulting, there is a variety of analysis that you can do. You can build a business model, for example, where you have a P&L statement, cash flow statement, balance sheet, and so on. You also can do a very simple ABC analysis, but there are countless types of very individual analysis that you usually do on a project, okay? And that's the reason why we use Excel so much, because it's so flexible, okay? And formulas that I usually use are like the main 3 formulas. So usually these are all the sum formulas, sum if formulas, VLOOKUP, and most of all index match. Okay, so these are kind of the main things that I use when I build models. Of course, you need also be strong in all the formatting and so on, but mainly focus on sum if, VLOOKUP, and index match. I think these are the main formulas in terms of data analysis that you usually use or need in management consulting. Then task number 4, and this is the last task usually, is visualizing data. Okay, so usually this is the case if you've done your analysis and you want to build a dashboard, for example, or if you just want to prepare an output. So if you want to hand over your analysis in Excel, this is usually where you try to visualize the data and to try to visualize your analysis. So this might include, for example, building charts. Also, of course, you need all the formatting stuff. The data validation functions are very helpful if you try to visualize something. And of course, you also need all this worksheet protection at the end, especially if you do a kind of handover, okay? So this is like the last step of your analysis, is to visualize your data. Okay, so these are mainly the 4 steps. So just to summarize, task number 1 or task area number 1 is that you collect data. And main formulas and skills that you use are usually formatting, linking cells, and simple additions and multiplications. Task area number 2 is that you prepare the data. The main formulas that I usually use are text to columns, removing duplicates, search and replace, and also all of the text functions. Then task area number 3 is if you analyze data. As I just mentioned, the most common formulas that I use are sum ifs, VLOOKUP, obviously, and most important, index match. And lastly, it's visualizing data, and it's important to know how to build charts, how to do all the formatting stuff, also data validation and worksheet protection, for example. So these are the main 4 tasks. So if you have any questions about those 4 tasks and the formulas that you use usually, or the skills that you need to work with that, then please leave a comment or write in the chat. I will go through it in a second. But first of all, I will share some power tips that I found to be very helpful during the last 3 years. So power tip number 1, it's similar to what I told you yesterday with PowerPoint. It's always content over design, right? Or quality over design. So if you work in Excel, before you work like hours to make it look nice and to do all the formatting, rather focus on the analysis. So check if your formulas are right, if the sums add up, check if you have any kind of analytical mistakes, if there is a wrong data input or so on. So really in Excel, it's very, very important, because if you have one simple or one easy or just one mistake that you do in one cell right in the back end, this can mess up the entire analysis, and at the end you have a wrong result. Okay, so it's very, very important, even much more important than in PowerPoint, to focus on excellent quality. So always make sure that you do the double checks and spend most of the time on the analysis and on quality checks, and only little time on making it look nice. Power tip number 2 is that you know the basics formulas, and as I just said in the analysis part, this is mainly like sum and sum ifs, also all of the if formulas, And of course, you need to know how to use index match and VLOOKUP, okay? So I would say that these are probably the three most important families of formulas that you have in management consulting. So before you start, make sure that you know how to use these formulas, and try to understand them so that you can apply them in practice. Tip number 3 is keep it simple, okay? And I honestly, I built so many Excel models, and Excel models can become very, very complicated. And very often you work on one model as a team. So in order to make it work for your team easier, to make it for your client easier, but also to make it for yourself easier, try to keep it as simple as possible. Try to only use like sums and multiplications, and in some cases index match, VLOOKUP, and like sum ifs and so on. But try to stick to these simple formulas. Otherwise, it will be very hard for people to understand what you did if they have to change something in the model or if they have to work with the model. Okay, and I know especially if you're good in Excel, you want to do all the fancy formulas that you learned and all the smart stuff. And I know it's fun. I like to do this as well, but I found it to be kind of not very helpful for the entire team and not very helpful for the client. And also it makes it sometimes very hard if you use complicated formulas to detect mistakes or errors that you did. Okay, so this is very important. Try to keep it as simple as possible to avoid mistakes. Power tip number 4, of course, is that you practice as much as possible. It's similar to what I said yesterday with PowerPoint, but if you work in Excel, just do it. If you're still in your studies, then try to build every model. If you have a university project where someone needs to build a model, then raise your hand and say, okay, I want to do it, just to get the practice. Also, if you are in your first years, or if you are an intern in consulting, then and someone has to do some work in Excel, just do it in order to practice, okay? The more you practice, obviously, the better you get. And I think especially at the beginning, you should try to build the necessary Excel skills as fast as possible, in order to just have a very good foundation in your career as a management consultant. And last tip is, because I also get often asked about Visual Basics. So Visual Basics is a kind of programming language in Excel. And I get asked very often if you need Visual Basics as a management consultant. And I would say, especially at the beginning, you don't need Visual Basics, okay? So just try to master all of the basics. Sometimes especially if we talk about data preparation, and if we talk about visualizing data or making some fancy dashboards or output sheets, yes, then sometimes Visual Basics can be helpful. But I would say like in 98% of the cases, you are very good with all the basic stuff. So before you learn VBA, focus on the basics. And as I just said, keep it simple. So Visual Basics, only apply it if you really, really need it. Good. So that's it. So just to summarize, again, the 4 tasks. First, collecting data, then preparing data, then doing the analysis, and then visualizing. And the power tips, just to summarize, it's first, content and quality over design. It's second, know the basic formulas like sum ifs, or some formulas, all the if formulas, and index match, of course. Tip number 3, keep it simple. Also, practice as much as you can, and only learn Visual Basics if you mastered all of the basic stuff. So if you have any questions, then please write them in the chat. In a second, I will go through it. Also, I want to mention that this is just a overview, right? As you just probably saw, I mean, I just tried to give you a structure, okay, how I would approach learning these skills. I would try to learn it by task category, okay? This also makes it easier for you to practice, okay? So think about what task you usually have in management consulting, and try to learn the skills according to these tasks. For me personally, I'm more the practical guy, so I like to practice, and having this kind of task category helped me a lot to develop those skills. if you're interested that I do deep dives about all of these task categories, then please let me know. Maybe you send me just a direct message on Instagram, or also leave a comment on YouTube. I think in order to do the deep dives, I probably would have to do a live session where I actually work in Excel, because just doing like a talking head video makes it very hard to transfer all of the Excel skills, obviously. But if you're interested to do that, then please let me know in the comments on YouTube, or write me a direct message on Instagram. Good, then I will go through the chat. That's probably very late, so not many questions. Good. No, I don't see any questions. Also, just a reminder, on Saturday, 10 a.m. CET, so this is Berlin time, I will do a live Q&A session for like 60 minutes. So if you have any questions, then please write in the YouTube comments, or send me a direct message on Instagram. So with that being said, I hope this brought value to you. I hope you have a great evening, and talk to you very soon. Talk to you tomorrow. Goodbye, Johannes.